If I were you, I'd probably starve to death in 3 days.
You contradict the future I foresee.
Quite rare. Let me show you something interesting.
There's a moment every single One Piece fan remembers exactly where they were when they saw it. When Luffy's hair turned white, his eyes lit up like a cartoon come to life, and Kaido, the strongest creature alive, got sent flying like a rag doll with a boing sound effect. That moment didn't just win a fight, it broke the entire power scale of this series in half, before and after. And that's not the only time this has happened. One Piece has quietly redefined what strong even means, like 6 or 7 times. And most fans don't realize just how much the rules of power have shifted under our feet since Chapter 1. So today, we're counting down the 10 fights that didn't just decide a winner, they rewrote what winning even looks like. Some of these will make you emotional, one of them still makes me want to throw my remote across the room. Let's get into it. Quick disclaimer before we start. This list isn't who would win in a fight. It's about the fights that changed the math. The ones where you watched it happen and thought, wait, the rules just changed. Power creep is normal in long shonen, but One Piece does something different. It doesn't just make people stronger, it keeps redefining what strength even is. Haki, Devil Fruit Awakening, Conqueror's Haki, Gear 5. Every single one of these fights is a turning point. Let's start at the bottom. I know. And by today's standards, Crocodile getting knocked out by a rubber guy who smells like sand feels almost quaint. But go back and remember what this fight actually meant at the time. Crocodile was the first real wall the story ever put up. A Logia, untouchable, made of sand, immune to blunt force, which, if you remember, was the entire foundation of Luffy's fighting style up to that point. Every single win Luffy had before this was built on, I hit you until you fall down. Crocodile made that useless. And this is the fight that first taught this show's audience a rule that would define the next 20 years of storytelling. Power isn't just about strength, it's about information. Luffy didn't win Alabasta by hitting harder. He won because he got wet. He figured out the exploit. This is small in retrospect, but it's the seed of everything. The first time One Piece said out loud, strength alone will never be enough. Every fight after this owes something to that lesson.
Moving before I change my mind.
This one still hurts, every time. Mihawk didn't even try. That's what made it devastating. This wasn't a battle, it was a demonstration. One sword, one arm behind his back. And Zoro, our loud, cocky, I'll be the world's greatest swordsman Zoro, got cut down like it was nothing. But here's why this fight matters for power scaling specifically. It's the first time the show drew a hard ceiling. Up until this point, you might have thought, sure, these pirates are strong, but how strong could they really be? And then Mihawk answers that question by casually being on an entirely different planet. This fight set the emotional and mechanical scale for the entire series. It told us there is a tier above what we've seen. There will always be a tier above what we've seen. And Zoro's scar, the one he carries for the rest of the story, became the physical proof that power gaps in this world aren't just narrative color. They're real, and they cost you something.
Luffy, yeah! You finally made it!
Okay, this one's a little goofy in hindsight, but stay with me, because this is the fight that quietly introduced one of the most important power scaling concepts in the entire series, the rock, paper, scissors rule of devil fruits. Enel is a god, literally worshipped as one. His lightning should end anyone, and yet Luffy, a rubber man, just doesn't conduct electricity. That's it. That's the whole trick. This fight matters because it's the moment One Piece committed to a rule that still governs its biggest battles today. Raw power doesn't automatically win, type advantage does. This is the same logic that years later lets characters like Luffy tank absurd hits from logic-breaking opponents. Enel versus Luffy is silly on the surface, but it's foundational underneath. It's the first this shouldn't work, but it does moment, and One Piece has been building on that idea ever since.
If I were you, I'd probably starve to death in 3 days.
I need you to understand something before we talk about this fight. Before Marineford, strongest man in the world was just a title. a rumor, a thing people said about Whitebeard the way you'd say something about a legend. And then he showed up, and he split the sky. The earthquake powers weren't the point. The point was scale. For the first time in the entire series, One Piece let us see what happens when the absolute peak of military power, 3 admirals, the fleet, the entire marine machine, and goes up against a single man who simply refuses to fall. And then Ace died in his arms anyway. That's the gut punch, right? Because this fight isn't remembered for who won. It's remembered because it proved something horrifying. Being the strongest doesn't mean you get to save the person you love. Whitebeard, the single most powerful being we'd ever seen in this story up to that point, still couldn't stop it. That reframed power in this show forever. Strength stopped being about who wins and started being about what does strength even cost you. If you didn't tear up during this arc, I genuinely don't know what to tell you.
That I am gonna murder Sakazuki.
This is the fight where Luffy stopped being just a rubber guy who stretches for jokes and became a genuine powerhouse. And the cost of that power became part of the story for the first time. Gear 2 and Gear 3 debuted here, and this matters because it introduced a rule that One Piece power scaling still runs on today. Power has a price tag. Gear 2 burns his lifespan a little every time he uses it. Gear 3 shrinks him back down afterward like a used balloon. This wasn't free strength, this was Luffy choosing to burn himself to save his friends. That price tag logic becomes essential later. Gear 4 exhausts him completely. Gear 5 has its own mysterious cost we're still learning about. This fight against Lucci is the first domino. The first time strength in this show wasn't a straight upgrade, it was a trade.
He's being held in the 4th floor control room of Building A.
You know, a fight redefined the power scale when the villain himself stops mid-battle and says essentially, wait, that's not supposed to be possible. This is the fight where Conqueror's Haki with Busashoku coding, armament-infused Conqueror's Haki, entered the picture. And it wasn't just a flex, it was the first time the show said raw Haki mastery can override Devil Fruit power entirely. Doflamingo's strings, one of the most broken abilities in the series, got physically shattered by Luffy's will alone. This fight matters because it planted a flag that the rest of the series has been building toward ever since. The idea that Haki, not Devil Fruits, is the true ceiling of power in this world. Everything from Zoro's Advanced Conqueror's Haki to Luffy's Gear 5 traces its roots back to this rooftop.
Have as part of the world government. I'm still a pirate.
I want to be honest with you, this might be my personal favorite fight on this entire list, and it's not close. Katakuri could see the future. Luffy learned to see it too, in real time, mid-fight, through sheer desperation and will. This wasn't a Devil Fruit trick or a power-up handed to him. This was Luffy earning advanced observation Haki through pure trauma and stubbornness, punch by punch, dodge by dodge, over dozens of chapters. And here's why this redefines power scaling more than almost anything else on this list. It proved that in One Piece, the highest tier of power isn't granted. It's forged in real time, under pressure, out of nothing. No fruit, no bloodline, no shortcut. Just a guy who refused to lose, learning to see the future because giving up wasn't an option. If Marineford is the emotional gut punch of this list, Katakuri is the emotional high. This is the fight that made you believe Luffy could actually become Pirate King. This one is brutal to watch, even now. Kaido, the strongest creature alive, hits Zoro with an attack that should have ended him instantly. And Zoro survives it. Barely, broken, bleeding from everywhere. But he survives it using a technique that requires understanding your opponent's Haki so precisely that you can redirect it through your own body. This fight redefined power scaling because it introduced the idea that survival at the highest tier isn't about tanking hits. It's about technical mastery under lethal pressure. Zoro didn't get stronger in the traditional sense here. He got smarter at the exact moment his life was on the line, and that distinction, brute strength versus technical brilliance, became one of the central tensions of the entire back half of this series. Also, can we just acknowledge, this man almost died, and the first thing he does afterward is apologize to Luffy for being weak. I'm not crying, you're crying.
Lock the boy up. Yes, sir.
Okay, here we go. The one you've been waiting for. For 2 years, Luffy had been getting his teeth kicked in by Kaido. Every single encounter ended the same way. Luffy on the ground, Kaido standing over him, laughing. It felt hopeless. It felt, for the first time in the entire series, like maybe our main character had actually hit a wall he couldn't climb. And then it happened. The drums, Joy Boy, the white hair, the cartoon logic taking over reality itself. Gravity stopped applying the way it used to. Colors changed. Sound effects became physical objects in the world. Kaido got launched with a Boing written across the sky like this was a Saturday morning cartoon. I want to explain why this moment matters beyond the spectacle, because the spectacle alone doesn't do it justice. Gear 5 didn't just make Luffy stronger, it changed the genre of the fight itself, mid-fight, in real time. One Piece had spent 1,000 plus chapters training you to read fights as physical confrontations. Speed, strength, technique. And then it said, what if the most powerful thing in this world was joy? What if the strongest form isn't about hitting harder, but about a character finally, fully becoming free? This is genuinely one of the boldest narrative swings in modern shonen history. It shouldn't have worked. It absolutely worked. And it changed what power means in this story permanently. Power stopped being purely physical and became something closer to spirit, freedom, and joy made manifest.
I'm so sick of it all.
And yet, for my number one, I'm not going with the flashiest fight. I'm going with the one that hurts the most, because it's the fight that first taught this entire fanbase what strongest actually costs. Whitebeard, already dying, already run through, already bleeding out, standing up, that gets ambushed by Blackbeard's entire crew and their stolen powers. And even then, even in that state, he keeps standing. He takes hit after hit and simply will not fall. Here's why this is number one. This fight didn't redefine a power system. It redefined the emotional logic of power in this entire series. Before this, strongest man in the world meant invincible. After this, it means something completely different. It means the man who refuses to fall down even when falling down would honestly be easier. Power in One Piece was never really about winning. It was about what you're willing to endure for the people and the era you believe in. Every fight on this list, Gear 5, Zoro's near death, Luffy's Conqueror's Haki, all of it is downstream of this single dying old man refusing to fall. That's the fight that redefined power scaling in One Piece forever. Not because of numbers, because of will.
Kicks the bucket, and now Ace has followed suit.
So that's the list. 10 fights, 10 moments where this show quietly or not so quietly tore up its own rulebook and wrote a new one. Here's what gets me about all of this. One Piece has been running for over 25 years, and it still finds ways to surprise us. It still finds new definitions of strength we didn't know we needed. That's not power creep. That's a story that actually knows what it's saying. I want to know from you, which one of these hit you the hardest? Was it Gear 5? Was it Whitebeard? Was it Zoro bleeding out on those stairs? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. If this video meant something to you, hit subscribe. I've got more of these coming. And trust me, we are just getting started. Until next time, see you on the Grand Line.